As markets debate whether Slovenia could be the next Cyprus, I'm on the phone now with Nick Stamenkovic of RIA Capital Markets to get the lowdown on Slovenia's economic situation. Nick, there seems to be much debate surrounding Slovenia's need for a bailout. The OECD have claimed that the country is on the verge of a serious banking crisis, yet have stated that a bailout is not required yet. Slovenia's president has claimed today that the country does not need international financial help. Why is there such a mixed picture here?
Well, I think if you look at the picture in Cyprus that we've had, the bailout there, the concerns about the economy and the bailing we saw of depositors in excess of €100,000 and indeed senior bank holders, the markets are worried that Slovenia might find itself in the same situation. However, there are big differences between the two. Whilst the banking sector in Slovenia is clearly in significant difficulty, the fiscal credentials in Slovenia are significantly better than those in Cyprus, and hence many investors are hopeful that Slovenia will avoid a bailout and hence won't follow the path of Cyprus.
Nick, in your opinion, does Slovenia require a bailout, or are there still measures that can be taken by the Slovenian Central Bank and administration to avoid this bailout?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between the banking sector and the sovereign. The banking sector clearly needs a restructuring. It's got a high level of bad debts and write-offs, and it's clearly been badly managed, and there's been poor governance, and hence there has to be some restructuring there. But the overall picture in the economy is that the overall debt-to-GDP ratio is significantly lower than in Cyprus, for example. And also, even though the banking sector is in difficulty, the size of bank assets in Slovenia relative to GDP is much smaller than that in Cyprus. So I'm not convinced that a bailout will exactly be forthcoming, but clearly more measures need to be taken to restructure the banking sector.
Certain steps do already seem underway, with the Finance Ministry selling off more than twice the amount of government bonds it had hoped to on Wednesday. Similarly, the central bank has appointed BNP Paribas, Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan to arrange a series of fixed income investor meetings set to commence on Monday. What are your thoughts here?
Well, we did see a much better than expected T-bill auction. That certainly helped sentiment, but it's much easier to sell T-bills than trying to sell short or longer dated bonds. So I assume the reason that the authorities have got the banks in is trying to encourage them that they're pursuing the right policies and try to provide some moral suasion for them to come in and buy bonds at a later date. But at least the T-bill auction is a step in the right direction, and it was well received by investors.
The current Slovenian administration have been in place a mere 4 weeks. Does this hamper or hinder matters?
Well, the markets will be hopeful that a change in the guard will lead to a change in policies and priorities. And already, they've signalled that something needs to be done to sort out the banks which are clearly in difficulty. But they haven't announced a blueprint yet, though a bad bank has been put in position. Clearly, there's a long way to go, but the markets will be hoping that they will they'll restructure the banks, they'll sort out the good from the bad, and they'll restructure the balance sheets, which will put the banks in a better position. But as yet, we haven't seen that. But clearly, with the new administration, the hope is that the right policies will be pursued, but time will tell whether this happens or not.
There have been some comments regarding the timing of this situation, falling in the same year as the German elections. It's thought that the closer we get to the elections, the more Germany, described today as the euro area's main paymaster, will attempt to get back out of their assistance. Are these comments fair? What impact will this have on struggling economies, such as Slovenia and Spain, for example?
Well, you can see clearly from the recent example in Cyprus, the Germans are very reluctant to extend the bailout beyond the agreed $10 billion. Hence the bailing you saw, as I mentioned earlier, of depositors, uninsured depositors and senior bank holders. Clearly, Mrs. Merkel doesn't want to be seen to be putting her hands in her pockets to help out other countries because it puts her in a very difficult position ahead of the elections. On the other hand, she is a clear Europhile, so she's got a very difficult path to balance. But until we get the German elections out of the way, I think more bailouts are not likely. Particularly, the Germans will be reluctant to go down that road and will look for alternative solutions, as we saw in Cyprus.
Thanks, Nick, for your comments on this topic. That's all we've got time for. We wish you a great day's trading and a fantastic weekend. Goodbye for now.